It's a wild thought, isn't it? The idea that your personal freedom, the things you have every right to do, could actually harm someone else. Well, it's a really challenging concept, and it's right at the heart of what the Apostle Paul called the law of liberty. Today, we're going to dive into what he meant by that, looking at his letters to the early churches in both Rome and Corinth.
So let's just get right to it. Let's start with this core question. Can your freedom actually be a danger to someone else? It sounds like a total paradox, right? But this is the central tension that Paul really wants us to wrestle with. And to answer that, we have to get our heads around this really powerful principle Paul introduces. See, he doesn't see liberty and law as enemies fighting each other. Nope. Instead, he sees them working together, governed by something even higher. He calls it the law of liberty. And look, this concept completely flips our modern idea of freedom on its head. This is not a license to do whatever you feel like. Instead, it's a freedom that has to operate within a higher law, the law of love. Basically, your liberty is meant to build other people up, not just to serve your own interests.
To explain how this works, Paul kind of breaks the church down into two groups. First, you've got the strong. These are believers who have a mature understanding of their freedom in Christ. Then you have the weak. Now, these folks might be newer to the faith, or maybe they just have a more sensitive conscience about debatable things, like back then, eating meat that might have been offered to an idol, or observing certain holy days. And it is so crucial to get this. These are not labels of value. It's not about who's better. It's just about a person's level of spiritual understanding in that moment.
And this is the absolute game changer. Paul's crucial point is this. Both groups, the strong and the weak, are ultimately accountable to one person and one person only, Christ. He's their master, they're not each other's. And that simple truth frees them from the whole business of judging each other, so they can focus on helping each other instead.
Okay, so let's see how this builds, because when this mutual respect and understanding breaks down, Paul warns about a really serious danger. He calls it the stumbling block problem. And here's how it happens. It's like a chain reaction. It all starts with a strong person just doing something they're totally free to do. But if they do it without love or awareness, a weak person watching can feel pressured to join in, even if it goes against their own conscience. And that single act, violating their conscience, is what ends up damaging their faith. Sometimes really, really badly.
Paul does not mince words on this. He gives this incredibly direct, powerful warning in his letter to the Corinthians. He says, take care. He's telling us to see our freedom not just as a possession, but as a serious responsibility. This right that we have comes with a profound duty to look out for others.
And the stakes here could not be higher. Paul is crystal clear, we're not just talking about making someone feel a little uncomfortable. The pressure to violate one's conscience can be so spiritually devastating that it could actually cause a person to walk away from their faith completely. He literally says the work of God in their life is torn down.
So if that's the problem, what's the solution? Well, this is where Paul pivots from that really stark warning to a beautiful picture of what true strength actually looks like. And it's not found in demanding your rights, but in active support.
And what is active support? The original language here suggests something so much more committed than just a pat on the back. It literally means clinging to and holding up those who are struggling. It's this idea of getting right there alongside them, helping to carry their burden, and absolutely refusing to let them stumble and fall.
So what does this look like in the real world? Well, it means offering real counsel and actually praying for people. It means choosing patience when you really feel frustration. It means refusing to judge someone on things that aren't essential to the faith. And here's the big one. It's being willing to limit your own personal freedom because you've decided that people are more important than your preferences. The point of all this isn't to force the weak person to instantly become strong. The goal is gentle instruction. It's building them up over time through relationship and a compassionate example, not by just overwhelming them with correction or demanding that they see things your way right now. So, Paul lays out two very different paths for the strong believer. And as you can probably guess, they lead to two very, very different destinations.
I mean, the contrast here is just stark. On one side, the path of active support leads to God's approval, to unity, to peace and joy. It actually makes you spiritually stronger. But on the other side, the path of being a stumbling block is described as sinning directly against Christ, destroying God's work, and causing spiritual ruin. The choice really couldn't be clearer.
Now, this whole idea of sacrificing for another person, this isn't some new rule Paul just invented out of thin air. He's simply calling believers to imitate the ultimate pattern of strength and love.
The ultimate example, of course, is Christ. Paul says he pleased not himself. Just let that sink in.
The one person with absolute, ultimate freedom and power chose to set it aside for the benefit of others. And that becomes the defining pattern for what authentic spiritual strength really looks like.
The parallel here is just so powerful. Christ, who had ultimate freedom, chose self-denial. The mature believer, who has personal freedom, chooses restraint. Christ literally bore the weaknesses of others. The strong believer is called to bear the infirmities of the weak. Our strength is meant to be a mirror of His.
So here's the crucial takeaway. Spiritual strength isn't some badge of honor that we get to show off. It's a tool. It's given to us for a purpose. God strengthens us, in part, so that we can turn around and help those who are struggling.
Okay, now it's really important that we get this next point right, because it's so easy to misunderstand all this talk about action and sacrifice.
All of these actions, supporting the weak, limiting our freedom, they are not the root of our salvation. They don't earn us anything with God. They can't. Instead, they are the fruit of our salvation. They are the natural, inevitable evidence that pops up from a life that has already been changed by grace.
To put it as simply as possible, how we live reveals what we truly believe. Our actions don't save us, but they absolutely show whether our faith is real. You know, a healthy tree just naturally produces good fruit. A genuinely transformed heart will naturally produce love and service for other people.
Which brings us right back where we started, with a deeply personal question for all of us. When it comes to the freedoms we enjoy, are we using them to patiently build other people up in love? Or, if we're honest, are we sometimes just using them to prove that we're right?